So down the silver streams of Eridan, on either side banked with a lily wall, wider than both rises a triumphant swan, and sings his dirge and prophesies his fall, diving into his watery funeral. But Eridan to Cedron must submit his flowery shore, nor can he envy it, if when Apollo sings, his swans do silence it. The heavenly voice I more delight to hear than gentle airs to breathe or swelling waves against the sounding rocks their bosoms tear, or whistling reeds that ruddy Jordan laves, and with their verdure his white head embraves. To chide the winds and high or hiving bees that fly about the laughing blooms of swallow eye, rocking asleep the idle grooms that lazy lie. And yet, how can I hear thee singing go when men incensed with hate thy death foreset? Or else, why do I hear thee sighing so when thou, inflamed with love, their life dost get? That love and hate and sighs and songs are met. But thus, and only thus, thy love did crave to send thee singing for us to thy grave, while we sought thee to kill and thou soughtest us to save. When I remember Christ our burden bears, I look for glory, but I find misery. I look for joy, but find a sea of tears. I look that we should live and find him die. I look for angel songs and hear him cry. Thus what I look I cannot find so well, or rather what I find I cannot tell. These banks so narrow are, the streams so high to swell. Christ suffers, and in this his tears begin. Suffers for us, and our joy springs in this. Suffers to death, here is his manhood seen, suffers to rise, and here his Godhead is. For man that could not by himself have ris, out of the grave doth by the Godhead rise. And God that could not die, and then his manhood dies, that we and both might live by that sweet sacrifice. Go giddy brains, whose wits are thought so fresh, pluck all the flowers that nature forth doth throw. Go stick them on the cheeks of wanton flesh, poor idle, forced at once to fall and grow, of fading roses and a melting snow. Your songs exceedingly exceed your matter, this of mine. The matter which it sings shall make divine. The stars dull puddles gild, in which their beauties shine. Who doth not see drowned in Declusian's name, when earth his men and sea had lost his shore? O Noah and in Nisus locked the fame of Samson yet alive and long before. In Phaethon's mine own fault I deplore. But he that conquered hell to fetch again his virgin widow by a serpent slain, another Orpheus was then dreaming poet's fame. This taught the stones to melt for passion, and dormant sea to hear him silent lie. And at his voice the watery nation to flock as if he deemed it cheap to buy. With their own deaths his sacred harmony, the while the waves stood still to hear his song, and steady shores waved with the reeling throng of thirsty souls that hung upon his fluent tongue. What better friendship than to cover shame? What greater love than for a friend to die? Yet this is better for a self to the blame, and this is greater for an enemy. But more than this, to die not suddenly, not with some common death or easy pain, but slowly and with torments to be slain. O depth without a depth, far better seen than sane. And yet the son is humbled for the slave, and yet the slave is proud before the son. Yet the creator for his creature gave himself, and yet the creature has to run from his creator, the self-good doth shun. And yet the prince and God himself doth cry to man, yet his traitor pardon not to fly. Yet man his God, and traitor doth the prince defy. Who is it sees not that he nothing is, but he that sees nothing? What weaker breast? Since Adam's armor fell, dares warrant his, that made by God of all his creatures best, straight made himself the worst of all the rest. If any strength we have, it is to ill, but all the good is God's, both power and will. The dead man cannot rise, though he himself may kill. But let the thorny schools their punctuals of wills, or good or bad or neuter dis, such joy we gained by our parentals, that good or bad, whether I cannot wis, to call upon it a happy mishap or a happy miss, that fell from Eden and to heaven did rise. I'll be the mitred cardinal more did prize his part in Paris than his part in paradise. A tree was first the instrument of strife, where Eve to sin her soul did prostitute. A tree is now the instrument of life, though ill that trunk and that fair body suit. All cursed tree, and yet, O blessed fruit, that death to him is life to us doth give. Strange is the cure when things past cure revive, and the physician dies to make his patient live. Sweet Eden was the arbor of delight, yet in his honey flowers all are poison blue. Gethsemane, the bower of baleful night, yet where Christ to health a poison for us drew. Yet all our honey in that poison grew. So we from sweetest flowers could suck our bane, and Christ from bitter venom could regain, extract life out of death and pleasure out of pain. A man was first the author of our fall, a man is now the author of our rise. A garden was the place we perished all, a garden is the place he pays our price. And the old serpent with a new device hath found a way himself for to beguile, so he that all men tangle in his wile is now by one man caught, beguiled but with his own guile. The dewy night had with her frosty shade mantled all the world, and the stiff ground sparkled in ice. Only the Lord that made all for himself dissolved found, sweat without heat and bled without a wound. Of heaven and earth and God the man forlore, thrice begged help of him whose sins he bore, and thrice denied of those not to deny had swore. Yet had he been alone of God forsaken, or had his body been embroiled alone in fierce assault, he might perhaps have taken some joy in soul when all joy else was gone, alone gone. But that hath God, and God to heaven is flown, and hell itself out from her grave doth rise, black as the starless night, and with them flies, yet blacker than they both, the sons of blasphemies. As when the planets with unkind aspect call from her caves the meager pestilence, the sacred vapor eager to infect obeys the voice of the sad influence, and vomits up 1,000 noisome scents. And the well of life, flaming his golden flood, with the sicketh air, fevers the boiling blood, and poisons sick air, and poisons all the body with contagious food. The bold physician too it cautious by those he cures himself is murdered. Kindness infects, pity is dangerous, and the poor infant yet is not fully bred. There where he should be born lies buried. So the bark prince from his infernal cell cast up his grisly torturers of hell, and whets them to revenge with this insulting spell. See how the world smiles in eternal peace, while we, the harmless brats and rusty throng, of night our snakes in curls do prank and dress. Why sleep our drowsy scorpions so long? Where is our wonted virtue to do wrong? Are we ourselves, or are we graces grown? The sons of hell or heaven was never known, our whips so overmossed and brands so deadly blown. O long desire, never hope for hour, when our tormentor shall our torments feel. O long desired hope for never hour, when our tormentor shall our torments feel. Arm yourselves, said dyers of my power, and make our judge for pardon to us kneel. Slice, launch, dig, tear him with your whips of steel. Myself in honor of our noble prize will power your reeking blood, shed with the cries of hasty heirs who their own fathers sacrifice. With that a flood of poison black as hell out from his filthy gorge the beast did spew, that all about his blessed bodies fell 1,000 flaming serpents hissing flew. About his soul from hellish sulphur threw, and every one brandished his fiery tongue, and worming all about his soul they clung, but he their stings tore out into the ground them flung. So have I seen a rock's heroic breast against proud Neptune that his ruin threats, when all his waves he hath to battle pressed, and with 1,000 swelling billows beats. The stubborn stone and foams and shapes and frets to hear him from his root unmoved stand, and more in heaps the barking surges band, the more in pieces beat, flee weeping to the strand. So may we oft a venturous father see, to please his wanton son, his only joy, coast all about to catch the roving bee, and stung himself his busy hands employ, to save the honey for the gamesome boy. Or from the snake her rancorous teeth erase, making his child the toothless serpent chase, or with his little hand the tumorous scourge embrace. Thus Christ himself to watch and sorrow gives, while doomed in heavenly sleep dead Peter lies. Thus man in his own grave securely lives, while Christ alive with 1,000 horrors dies. And yet more, for theirs his own pardon cries. No sin had he, yet all our sins he bare. So much doth God for others' evils care, and yet so careless men for their own evils are. See drowsy Peter, see where Judas wakes, where Judas kisses him whom Peter flies, or kiss more deadly than the sting of snakes, whilst love more hurtful than true injuries. Ah me, how dearly God his servant buys. For God his man at his own blood doth hold, and man his God for 30 pence hath sold. So tin for silver goes, and dunghill dross for gold. Yet was it not enough for sin to chase, a servant to choose, a servant to betray his Lord to them, but that a subject must his king accuse, but that a pagan must his God condemn, but that a father must his son contemn, but that the son must his own death desire, that prince and people servant and desire, Gentile and Jew, and he against himself conspire. Was this the oil to make thy saints adore thee, the frosty spittle of thy rascal throng? Are these the verges that are borne before thee, base whips of cord and knotted all along? Is this thy golden scepter against wrong, a reedy cane? Is that the crown adorns thy shiny locks, a crown of spiny thorns? Are these the angels' hymns, the priest's blasphemous scorns? Whoever saw honor before ashamed, afflicted majesty, debased height, innocence guilty, honesty defamed, liberty bound, health sick, the sun in night. But since such wrong was offered unto right, our night is day, our sickness health is grown, our shame is veiled. Now this now remains alone for us, since he was ours, that we be not our own. And I was ordained for rest and not for pain, but they to pain their Lord their rest contemned. Good laws to save the bad men would have slain, and not bad judges with one breath by them, the innocent to pardon and condemn. Death for revenge of murderers, not decay of guiltless blood, but now a headlong sway, man's murderer to save, man's savior to slay. Frail multitude whose giddy laws list, and best applause is windy flattering, most like the breath of which it doth consist, no sooner blown, but as soon vanishing, as much desired as little profiting, that makes the men that have it off as light as those that give it, which the proud invite and fear, the bad man's friend, the good man's hypocrite. It was but now their sounding clamor sung, blessed is he that comes from the Most High. And all the mountains with hosannas rung, and now away with him, away they cry, and nothing can be heard but crucify. It was but now the crown itself they save, then golden name of king unto him gave, and now no king but only Caesar they will have. It was but now they gather blooming May, and of his armies disrobe the branching tree, and stroll with boughs and blossoms all thy way. And now the branchless trunk a cross for thee, and May dismayed by coronet must be. It was but now they wear so kind to throw their own best garments where their feet should go, and now thyself they strip, and bleeding wounds do show. See where the author of life is dying, O fearful day, he dead, what hope of living? See where the hopes of all our lives are buying. O cheerful day, they thought, what fear of grieving. Lo, love for hate and death for life is giving. Lo, how his armies are stretched abroad to grace thee, and as they open stand, a call to embrace thee. Why stayest thou then, my soul? Oh, fly, 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 hither haste thee. His radius head with shameful thorns they tear, his tender back with bloody whips they rent. His side and heart they furrow with a spear, his hands and feet with ruining, riving nails they tent. And as to death's enthrall his soul they meant, they jolly at his grief and make their game, his naked body to expose to shame, that all might come to see and on all might see that came. Whereat the heaven put out his guilty eye, that durst behold so execrable sight, and sable all in black the shady sky, and the pale stars stuck with unwonted fright, quenched their everlasting lamps in night. And at his birth, as all the stars heaven had, were not enough, but that a new star was made, and now both new and old and all away did fade. The amazed angels shook their fiery wings, ready to lighten vengeance from God's throne. One down his eyes upon the manhood flings, another gazes on the Godhead, none known. But surely thought his wits were not his own. Some flew to look if it were very he, but when God's arm unarmed they did see, albeit they saw it was, they vowed it could not be. The sated air hung all in cheerless black, through which the gentle wind soft sighing flew, and Jordan into such huge sorrow brake, as if the holy stream a measure knew, that all his narrow banks he overthrew. The trembling earth with horror inwardly shook, and stubborn stones with grief unused to brook did burst, and ghosts awakened from their grave gan look. The wise philosopher cried out aghast, the God of nature surely languisheth. The sad centurion cried out as fast, the Son of God was dead. The headlong Jew hung down his pensive head, and homeward fared, and ever as he went, he smote his breast half desperately bent. The very woods and beasts did seem his death lament. The graceless traitor round about did look. He looked not long, and the devil quickly met him, to find a halter which he found and took. Only a giblet now he needs must get him. So on a withered tree he fairly set him, and helped him fit the rope, and in his thought 1,000 furies with their whips he brought. So there he stands, ready to hell to make his vault. For him a waking bloodhound yelling loud, that in his bosom long had sleeping laid, a guilty conscience barking after blood, pursued eagerly, no ever stayed, till the betrayer's self it had betrayed. Oft changed he place and hope a way to wind, but change of place could never change his mind. Himself he flies to lose, and follows for to find. There is but two ways for his soul to have, when parting from the body forth it purges, to fly to heaven or fall into the grave, where whips of scorpions with their stinging scourges feed on the howling ghost in fiery surges of brimstone rowl about the cause of night, where flames do burn and yet no spark of light, and fire both fries and freezes the blaspheming sprite. There lies the captive soul, all sighing sore, reckoning 1,000 years since her first bands. Yet stays not there, but adds 1,000 more, and at another 1,000 never stands, but tells them to the stars and heaps of sands. And now the stars are told and sands are run, and all those thousand myriads done. And yet, but now at last, but now all is begun. With that a flaming brand a fury catched, and shook and tossed it round in his wild thought. So from his heart all joy, all comfort snatched, with every star of hope as he sought, with present fear and future grief distraught, to fly from his own heart and aid implore of him. The more he gives, that hath the more, whose storehouse is the heavens, too little for his store. Stay, wretch on earth, cried Satan, restless rest. Knowest thou not justice lives in heaven? Or can the worst of creatures live among the best? Among the blessed angels, cursed man. Will Judas now become a Christian? Whither will hope's long wings transport the mind? Or canst thou not thyself a sinner find? Or cruel to thyself wouldst thou have mercy kind? He gave thee life, why shouldst thou seek to slay him? He lent thee wealth to feed thy avarice. He called thee friend, but that thou wouldst betray him. He kissed thee, though he knew his life the price. He washed thy feet, and shouldst thou his sacrifice? He gave thee bread and wine and body, blood, and at thy heart to enter in he stood. But then I entered in all my snaky brood. As when wild Pantheus, grown mad with fear, whole troops of hellish hags about him spies, to bloody sun stalking the dusky spear, and twofold Thebes runs rolling in his eyes, or through the scene starring Orestes flies, with eyes flung back upon his mother's ghost, that with infernal serpents all embossed, and torches quenched in blood, doth her stern son accost. Such horrid gorgons and misformed forms, of damned fiends flew dancing in his heart, that now, unable to endure their storms, fly, fly, he cries thyself, whate'er thou art. Hell, hell already burns in every part. So down into the torturer's arms he fell, that ready stood his funerals to yell, and in a crowd of night to waft him quick to hell. Yet oft he snatched and started as he hung, so when his senses half in slumbered lie, the headlong body ready to be flung by the deluding fancy from some high and cragged rock recovers greedily, and clasps the yielding pillow half asleep, and as from heaven it tumbled to the deep, feels a cold sweat through every trembling member creep. There let him hang emboweled in blood, as there never any gentle shepherd feed his blessed flocks, nor ever heavenly food fall on the cursed ground, nor wholesome seed that may the least delight or pleasure breed. Let never spring visit his habitation, but nettles, kicks, and all the weedy nation with empty elders gross at signs of desolation. There let the dragon keep his inhabitants, and stinking carcass be thrown avant, fawns, sylvans, and deformed satyrs dance, wild cats, wolves, toads, and screech owls direly chaunt. There ever let some restless spirit haunt, and hollow sound, and clashing shines to scar the passenger, and eyes like to the star that sparkles in the crest of angry Mars afar. But let the blessed dews of ever shower upon the ground, in whose fair fields I spy the bloody ensign of our Savior. Strange conquest, where the conqueror must die, and he is slain that wins the victory. But he that living had no house to owe it, now that had no grave, but Joseph must bestow it to own it. O run, ye saints of pace, and with the sweet flowers bestow it. And ye glad bestrow it, and ye glad spirits that now sainted sit in your celestial thrones in beauty dressed, though I your tears recount, O let not it with after sorrow wound your tender breast, or with new grief unquiet your soft breast. Enough it is me your plaints to sound again, that never could enough myself complain. Sing then, sing aloud, thou Aramithian swain. But long he stood in his faint arms upholding the fairest spoil heaven ever forfeited, with such a silent passion grief unfolding, that had the sheet but on himself been spread, for he for the corse might have been buried, and with him stood the happy thief that stole by night his own salvation, and a shoal of Marys drowned around about him set in dole. At length kissing his lips before he spake, as if from thence he fetched again his ghost, to Mary thus with tears his silent break. O woeful soul, what joy in all our cost, when him we hold we have already lost. Once didst thou lose thy son, but foundst again. But now findest thy son, but findest him lost and slain. On me, though he could death, how canst thou life sustain? Where'er, dear Lord, thy shadow hovereth, blessing the place wherein it dines abide. Look how the earth dark horror covereth, clothing in mournful black her naked side, willing her shadow up to heaven to glide. To see, and if it meet thee wandering there, that so, and if herself must miss thee here, at least her shadow may her duty to thee bear. See how the sun in daytime clouds his face, and lagging vespers losing his late team, forgets in heaven to run his nightly race, but sleeping on bright Otis top doth dream. The world in chaos is, no joyful beam, looks from his starry bower, the heaven do mourn, and trees drop tears lest we should grieve alone. The winds have learnt to sigh, and waters hoarsely groan. And you, sweet flowers, that in this garden grow, whose happy states a thousand souls envy, did you your own felicities but know yourselves unplucked would to his funeral high? You never could in better season die. Oh, that I might into your places slide, that gates of heaven stands gaping in his side. There in my soul should steal, and all her faults should hide. Are these the eyes that made all others blind? Oh, why are they themselves now blemished? Is this the face in which all beauty shined? What blast hath thus his flower debellished? Are these the feet that on the watery head of the unfaithful ocean passage found? Why go they now so lowly underground? Was this washed with our worthless tears and their own precious wound? One hand but of thy garments that he wore could medicine whole countries of their pain. One touch of this pale hand could life restore, one word of these cold lips revive the slain. Well, the blind man thy Godhead might maintain. What though the solemn Pharisees repine? He that should both compare at length would find the blind man only saw, the seers all were blind. Why should they think thee worthy to be slain? Was it because thou gavest their blind men eyes, or that thou madest their lame to walk again, or for thou healest their sick men's maladies, or madest their dumb to speak and dead to rise? Or could all these but any grace have won, that would they not have saved thy life have, what would they not to save thy life have done? The dumb men would have spoke, the lame men would have run. Let me, oh, let me ne'er some fountain lie that through the rock heaves up its sandy head, or let me dwell upon some mountain high whose hollow root and baser parts are spread on fleeting waters in his bowels bred, that I their streams and they my tears may feed, or clothed in some hermit's ragged weeds, spend all my days in weeping for this cursed deed. The life I once did love I leave, the love in which I once did live I loathe. I hate the light that I did my light bereave. Both love and life I do despise you both. Oh, that one grave my both are ashes clothe. A love, a life, a light I now obtain, able to make my age grow young again, able to save the sick and to revive the slain. Thus spend we tears that never can be spent on him that sorrow now no more shall see. Thus send we sighs that never can be sent to him that died to live, that we and would not be to be there where he would, we bury we. This heavenly earth here let us softly sleep, the fairest shepherd of the fairest sheep. So all the body kissed and homeward went to weep. So home their bodies went to seek repose, but at the grave they left their souls behind. Oh, who the force of love celestial knows, that can the shines of nature self unbind, chains of nature self unbind, sending the body home without the mind. All blessed Virgin, what high angels art, can ever count thy tears or sing thy smart, when every nail that pierced his hand did pierce thy heart. O Philo man, perched on an aspen sprig, weeps all the night her lost virginity, and sings her sad tale to the merry twig that dances at such joyful misery, and never lets sweet rest invade, ever lets sweet rest invade her eye, but leaning on the thorn her dainty chest, for fear soft sleep should steal into her breast, express in her song grief not to be expressed. So when the lark, poor bird, afar espied her yet unfeathered children, whom to save she strives in vain, slain by the fatal skies, which from the meadow her green locks does shave, that her warm nest is now become their grave. The woeful mother up to heaven springs, and all about her plaintive notes she flings, and her untimely fate most pitifully sings.